Most couples approaching retirement have thought carefully about the money, but a lot of them have never actually sat down and talked about what retirement is supposed to look like for each of them individually. And when they get there with different pictures in their heads, it creates a kind of friction that no financial plan can fix. So in this video, I want to walk through the conversation I see most couples either avoid or never think to have, because getting this right before you retire makes everything else easier. This comes up more than most people expect in my work with clients. Two people arrive at retirement together, same household, same super, same financial plan. And within the first 6 months, they're quietly frustrated with each other. Not about money, about everything else. Because here's what I've noticed. Most couples plan retirement as if it's one shared experience. But in reality, it's two individual experiences happening at the same time. And those two experiences don't always look the same. One person might be desperate to slow down, to stop, to rest, to finally have time. The other might be terrified of stopping. Their identity is tied to work. Their social life is built around colleagues. Their sense of purpose comes from what they do. Neither of those things are wrong, but if you haven't talked about it, retirement can feel like you're living two completely different lives under the same roof. I had a client, a couple who had planned very carefully. Good balance, good structure, everything in order financially. 6 months into retirement, the husband was struggling. His wife had filled her days immediately. Grandchildren, friends, things she'd been putting off for years. He hadn't. He hadn't thought about what his days would actually look like, and the gap between her experience and his was creating real tension. Not a financial problem, a conversation that never happened. This is where it becomes important, because the financial plan and the life plan are not the same thing, and most retirement planning conversations focused almost entirely on one of them. So what are the conversations worth actually having? Let me walk you through the ones that matter most. The first one is, when are we actually retiring? And I don't mean the date on the calendar. I mean, are you both ready at the same time? Because often, one partner is ready before the other. One might want to go at 60, the other at 65. And if you haven't talked about that explicitly, one person ends up feeling pushed and the other ends up feeling held back. That's a tension that builds quietly and tends to surface at exactly the wrong moment. The second conversation is, what does a good day actually look like? Not a good year, not a good holiday, a good Tuesday. Because retirement is mostly made up of ordinary days. And if you haven't thought about what those look like individually, you end up defaulting to each other's version. Which sounds fine until one of you realizes your version and their version are actually quite different. Some couples want to do everything together in retirement. Travel together, fill every day together, be present for all of it together. Others need more independence than they expected. Time alone, their own projects, their own rhythm. Neither is right or wrong, but assuming your partner wants the same thing you want without checking is where a lot of quiet disappointment starts. The third conversation is about money and spending. And I know that sounds like the financial planning conversation, but it's actually different. Most couples have one partner who is more comfortable spending in retirement and one who finds it harder. We covered this in the biggest regret video. The tendency to hold back, to protect the number, to feel uncomfortable drawing down. But when the dynamic plays out between two people, it gets more complicated. One partner wants to take the trip. The other thinks they should wait. One wants to help the kids now. The other wants to hold the money back just in case. And without a shared framework for how you're going to make those decisions together, every spending conversation becomes a negotiation. This is actually one of the most practical things a financial plan can do for a couple. Not just model the numbers, but give both people a shared reference point. This is what we have, this is what we can spend, this is how we make decisions together. Because when both people understand the plan, not just one of them, the individual conversations become much easier. The fourth conversation is about what happens if things change. Health, capacity, energy levels. Retirement at 62 and retirement at 75 are very different experiences. And a couple who haven't talked about that tend to avoid it entirely, which means when something does change, There's no framework for handling it together. It doesn't need to be a heavy conversation, but knowing broadly how you'd approach those changes as a team is worth more than most people realise. And the fifth conversation, and probably the most avoided, is what each of you actually wants retirement to mean. Not financially, not personally. What have you been putting off? What matters to you that work has been crowding out? What does a life well lived actually look like for you specifically? These questions can feel uncomfortable to ask out loud. Partly because the answers matter, and partly because you might find out your partner's answer is different to yours. But that difference is much easier to navigate before retirement than after it. This is general in nature, so it's important to consider your own situation, because every couple's dynamic is different. But the patterns I've described show up consistently, and the couples who navigate retirement most smoothly aren't always the ones with the most money. They're the ones who talked about it properly before they got there. So if you're watching this with your partner, good. That's exactly the right starting point. And if you're watching this alone, consider sharing it, because the conversation this video is really about is one worth having. If you're approaching retirement and want structured guidance rather than figuring this out alone, I work with Australians in exactly that position. You can find details below.